And now, Aaron Blanchard presents Fight Camp, an optative education.
Welcome everyone to another edition of Fight Camp, an optative education with me, Aaron Blanchard, the podcast enhancer. A show brought to you by the Podcast Hut, a show for new fans of mixed martial arts and the biggest brand of mixed martial arts, the UFC. So just before we go into this episode, which is all about the heavyweight division this week, I'd just like to say a big thank you to everyone who's got involved, everyone who shared, Twitter, Facebook, all the social media outlets, that's Spreaker.com, that's helped us get this show onto the new and noteworthy section, in the sports section of iTunes. We're deadly chuffed. It's doing really well. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for your help. I love doing this. So thanks for getting involved. Thank you to the Podcast Hut for letting me do the show. So brilliant. That's all the good stuff out of the way. So thank you again. Here's this week's episode, which is Fight Camp, I'm not taking education, and this is the heavyweight division. Right, okay, so we've had the last episode we spoke about all the weight classes, and I did a quick brief breakdown of all the divisions. So we're going to talk about the big guys in the UFC now. We're going to talk about the heavyweight division, which is the longest reigning division in the UFC. So these are the guys that are anything up to 265 pounds is the weight limit. The big men, the heavy hitters, the main attraction really when the UFC started. So there was an original tournament that held in 1997 on February the 7th. It was a massive tournament to crown the inaugural UFC heavyweight champion. In the final, Mark the Hammer Coleman, who is a Hall of Famer now, defeated Dan the Beast Severn, who is another Hall of Famer, to become the first heavyweight champion of the UFC. Now this really was kind of a shock, because everyone thought Dan the Beast Severn was going to win. Dan the Beast Severn is a bit of a legend, like I said, a Hall of Famer. He had over 127 MMA fights in his career, which is a massive fight. A lot of people have like 20, maybe 30 tops, so having 127 fights in his career is huge. Hence he's a Hall of Famer, hence he is a well-known name in mixed martial arts. But the fact that Mark Coleman beat him for the first title was huge at the time. Nobody saw it come in. So yeah, great. So he was the first heavyweight champion. That's Mark the Hammer Coleman. Now I'm not going to mention every champion that ever is in the heavyweight division, because there's been quite a lot. This is the most open division in the UFC. Anybody can beat anybody on the day. It's literally one punch and the fight can be over. That's most fights, but in the UFC, in the heavyweight division, that's the more of the case. It's lots of title changes. So the next name I'm going to really talk about is the guy who's been the champion of the division the most. Okay, now this is another Hall of Famer, and this is the natural Randy Couture. Okay, Randy Couture is a very famous man. He's an actor now. He's in the Expendable movies, in the franchise of those. But first and foremost, he's a mixed martial artist and a great fighter, and he's one of the icons of the sport at the time. He held the heavyweight division title 3 times, the only person to do that. He also held the light heavyweight championship a couple of times as well, so he's a complete multiple division champion, absolute legend, and he won the heavyweight title 3 times. Definitely check out any Randy Couture fight on YouTube. He got some great wars, one hell of a fighter, and a name that really changed the landscape of mixed martial arts during the time he was a fighter. Right then, so moving on, we're going to talk about a champion now who was the youngest UFC heavyweight champion at the time he won the title. He's also a multiple heavyweight champion, and his name is Frank Mir. Frank Mir is a soon-to-be, in my opinion, Hall of Famer. He's still an active fighter. He's a great fighter. He's known as one of the greatest submission fighters in the heavyweight division. He's also known for being brutally, literally breaking people's arms, taking them home with him, as he likes to say, putting them on his mantelpiece. He has broken a lot of arms. He's a great fighter, but Frank Mir was the youngest heavyweight champion at the time. He was 25 when he won the title in 2004. He had the belt taken off him then because he was in an horrific motorbike accident, and he nearly never fought again. But he came back, and then he came back to win the title back again as an interim champion a few years later down the line. So Frank Mir is on my list today of people you need to know about in the UFC heavyweight division because, the man's just a great fighter. He's still going. He's had some legendary fights. He's the only man to submit and knock out Minotauro Nagara, which is an absolute feat in itself because he's a legend. And like I said, he's broken arms. The very famous fight against Tim Silver, where Tim Silver, the referee stopped the fight because he saw Tim Silver's arm break. Tim Silver carried on, but he was later taken to hospital to find his forearm had been broken in 4 places. So that's horrific. So when a man of that size is so skilled in submission, he is a very dangerous man. So Frank Mir is definitely a man to watch. And like I said, he's still going, so you never know with Frank Mir. He could even have a third reign one day. You just never know, and you never know with the heavyweight division. The next mixed martial artist I'm going to talk about actually had quite a public and big feud with Frank Mir. You've probably heard of him, and if you listen to my other show when I was on the Midweek Wrestle Chat, you would obviously hear the name of Brock Lesnar. Now, Brock Lesnar was in the UFC for a few years as a heavyweight fighter. I used to cut weight, would you believe, actually cut weight to make the weight class of 265 pounds because he was obviously so much heavier. But Brock Lesnar's first fight in the UFC was against Frank Mir. The fight was going great for Brock Lesnar until he foolishly left his leg clean open and Frank Mir put him in a heel hook and tapped him out. But up until that fight, Frank Mir was getting quite badly beaten up by Brock Lesnar. Lots of words were exchanged. It's a very, very famous feud. And Brock then went on in his 3rd or 4th fight to fight the legendary Randy Couture for the heavyweight title. And he beat the legendary Randy Couture for the heavyweight title. So Brock, within a few fights, took over the UFC, came out of nowhere, and was literally the man, the baddest man on the planet. Because if you win the heavyweight division in the UFC, you are considered as the baddest man on the planet. So this feud escalated, and then it led to UFC 100. UFC 100 at the time was the biggest card that the UFC have ever done, and the main event was Brock Lesnar, the rematch against the only person that had ever beaten him, Frank Mir, but this time for the UFC heavyweight title. This fight did not disappoint. It was a great fight, and at the end there was a very famous promo done by Brock Lesnar regarding the fight and some of the comments made about that Frank Mir made about him. Absolute great fight, very iconic moment in the UFC, and definitely a match to watch. It was just, they don't like each other. It led to great matches and a great feud. And one day, you never know, there could be Brock Lesnar versus Frank Mir 3. Because you could never say never with the UFC. Brock's obviously quite happy in WWE now, and I don't think he is ready to fight again. But one day, you just never know. That's the kind of fight that people would watch. I don't think it's going to happen, but it's always one of those ones you hope would happen, a rubber match between Frank Mir and Brock Lesnar. So like I said, Brock Lesnar was very important in the UFC. He kind of changed the landscape of the fan base of the UFC. Became quite a big deal, brought lots of new media and coverage to the UFC because of how famous he was because of him being in the WWE. So that was when it all started to change in the heavyweight division, and new athletes are coming through. Now, these new athletes weren't as big as Brock Lesnar, because Brock Lesnar was a very big man. They weren't as big, but they were fitter, faster, endurance was amazing, techniques were improving, and then this leads just to Cain Velasquez. Actually, I'm going to say Cain Velasquez and Junior Dos Santos, both great UFC heavyweight champions, different species of men compared to what these massive men were before them. They're technically gifted, quicker, heavy hitters, precision, super athletes. Junior Dos Santos also had a reign as champion, Cain Velasquez has had 2 reigns as champion. Brilliant fights. Some of the best heavyweight fights you'll ever see has got Cain Velasquez in them. He beat Brock Lesnar quite badly when he won the title from Brock. Just brilliant. The UFC heavyweight division has changed somewhat. There's some massive heavy hitters. You've got people that haven't been champion. You've got like Mark Hunt, Super Samoan Mark Hunt. You've got Big Country Roy Nelson. If you've never seen these guys fight, please put them into YouTube. Big Country Roy Nelson. This man they've hit him with literally everything. Trucks, planes, anything they've hit him with. He will not go down. He's only ever been knocked out once, and that was by Mark Hunt. That was an amazing fight in itself. So check out these fights of people that haven't been champions but they make the heavyweight division so good. There's Travis Brown, an amazing fighter, literally knock anybody out at any time. Alistair Overeem, he's a big fighter, kickboxing specialist. These are massive men who are skilled, precision, deadly men. Okay, the heavyweight division is very exciting. That's why there's been like 18 different champions, title champion reigns from like 16 men. It's the most open division in the UFC. Anybody can beat anybody because it's literally one punch can change a complete fight. The heavyweight division, there's so many big names, there's so many Hall of Famers that have been in the heavyweight division, there's so many people that will be Hall of Famers who are in the heavyweight division, like Minotauro Nogueira, he's definitely going to go in the Hall of Fame, Brock Lesnar one day maybe, Cain Velasquez, the current champion, Fabricio Verdum. Now, just amazing athletes that have changed. Now, a lot of these guys as well have had careers early on in the UFC when they were younger, gone away, come back, and had like a second coming and had a new career in the UFC and came back, and like Fabricio Verdum came back and he's now he's the champion. Andrei Arlovski has been the champion. He's gone away to another company. He's now come back and he's fighting for the title. Trying to get a title fight again, so it's a big layoff between going to UFC, coming back. These are super athletes, these heavyweight men. It's the most exciting division, really, because they're so big, these guys. Rarely fights go past the first round in a heavyweight division. When they do, they're wars. So I recommend you watch on YouTube, you watch any of the heavyweight title fights. I mean, like, there's guys now that can, like, heavyweight guys who can do backflips and stuff in the ring to celebrate. Now, that's unreal when you're looking at a man that's 265 pounds. So, brilliant athletes. I love watching heavyweights. There has been some main events, some pay-per-views that were just heavyweight fights on the whole card. UFC 146 was, the whole main card were all heavyweight fights, which also had a title fight in there as well. It was just incredible. I mean, talking these massive men. So, like, this guy called Stefan Struve, the skyscraper. It's not easy for me to say. The skyscraper, Stefan Struve. He's a Dutch guy. He's 7 foot tall, legitimately 7 foot tall. He's huge. You should see him. He towers higher than the octagon. But a great fighter. Just come back from a big injury. Great fighter. Stipe Miocic is on the card. Another great hitter. One of the top ranked guys in the world, precision boxer, really dangerous man. Big Country Roy Nelson, like I've said. If you've never seen this guy, you'll look at him and think, Jesus, this guy's a fighter. He's got a massive beard. He's got a bit of a belly. He's not like in shape like the other guy. Well, he's in shape, but he doesn't look like the other guys. He's not like 6 packs hanging out of him and stuff. He's got a bit of a belly. He's quite happy to have a belly. But the guy, his jiu-jitsu is amazing. He's got one punch knockout power. He can be hit. You can literally hit him with a bus. He's not going down. So, great fighter. Cain Velasquez, another noticeable guy that you need to look at when it comes to the heavyweight division, is a guy called Antonio Bigfoot Silva, a Brazilian fighter. The guy is huge. Okay, he's called Bigfoot for a reason. He's massive, but a great fighter. One of my favourite knockouts ever in the UFC is Antonio Bigfoot Silva when he knocks out Alistair Overeem. I can't remember which card it is, but I will find out. If you get a chance to watch it, watch it. It's amazing. It's